It's 5:30, so we're going to open the meeting. So I call the meeting to order. And then first, we have the consent agenda and previous minutes. And I don't believe we have any policies at this time. Am I correct?
We do not.
Okay, so anybody want to take a move on the previous minutes or have a conversation?
I'll move to accept.
We have a motion to accept. Do we have any board members on Zoom? No. Okay, so I can just take a roll, or don't need a roll.
You don't need a roll.
All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. So the next is agenda, oh, I feel like that's loud. Agenda preview and prioritization. Is there anything that we need to shift?
We have a student hearing that we need to do at tonight's meeting. I would like to move that to the top of the agenda.
So we have a student hearing and that needs to be an executive?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move that before the public comment. But before we get further into the agenda, we as the board need to have a conversation. We are holding a public meeting in a building that has a mask requirement. So we need to decide whether for this meeting we're going to institute safety rules of requiring a mask to attend the meeting.
For all your meetings, right? Or just this one?
Oh, for all the meetings going forward, as long as there's a mask requirement. Anybody have any conversation about that? No? So I would institute a motion saying that we require masks to attend the meeting.
I know you're talking about me, I have a medical exemption,
Okay,
so that's why I'm sitting back here.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm coming to other meetings, but
yeah.
I have a mask exemption.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no more discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So at this point, we have to enter the student hearing, which is an executive session, which I know is not ideal at the start of a meeting. So in order to not displace you all, the board is going to leave for executive session instead of asking you to leave. We are going to have a meeting for a hearing, and then we are going to come back after executive session. So after we come back from executive session, it'll be public comment period. And just to let you know how that's going to work, the public comment time is a time for the public to do exactly that. It's to comment and for us to hear you. The board will not be responding to any comments. You will have 3 minutes, of which I'll have a timekeeper, Amy, who will let us know when that 3 minutes is up. And yeah, I think that's how that's going to go when we come back. So I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we'll be back momentarily. Okay, so we're back, and so I will make a motion to bring the code to act as for executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, again, thank you everyone for waiting. So now we're going to go into the public comment. If anybody would like to comment, you can come to the microphone and just state your name and the town of residence. Or if anybody online would like to comment.
To the town.
Oh, sorry, as I said before we went to the meeting, I give 3 minutes per person.
Yep.
Do you have a timer?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, is there anybody in the room that would like to comment? Okay, I don't see any. Anybody online at this time would like to comment? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to proceed to the next agenda item, which is our school spotlight, which is Rachel Reynolds is up first. Is she not back yet?
Yeah, so
Where are you?
I can just be loud.
Do you want this?
No.
Okay.
So I just made a little video about this, like kind of what the start of the school year has looked like for us, and it's short. It's just kind of like a day in the life of middle schoolers, and I'll kind of just take you through a day, and got some snippets of what's going on in classrooms and learning activities, and you know, what we do when we go outside, and that's about it. And I think I shared the link of it to somebody. Oh, so you had two programs
to help maximize their space to support purchase of the top instead of out. So we have like a prevent them with the special service, but 2 months more on the ground to the big
apologize for the video quality. It didn't do that when I created it, so I'm not sure why it's doing it now. But there's a YouTube link I can share if people want to see it not be all glitchy.
Can you share the link, Rachel, so that people can go back in?
Yes, not this moment, but I
Yes.
can, tomorrow morning I can email that out to the school board, so absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next we have Hope Hollow Nate Schmar for Career Center.
Yeah, so I'm going to introduce Levi Irish. She is our new co-op coordinator at Cold Hollow and work-based learning coordinator at both Enosburg and Richford. So we're kind of sharing staff, sharing resources. And she's going to be out and about in the community quite a bit with employees, employers. And just wanted to have her kind of give a quick rundown of her plans and what she's up to. And hopefully the board can help with resources and finding placements for our kids, so it's not just you're not just watching, you're thinking about how you can also help our students, so and also whoever's watching. So multifaceted reason for bringing Levi in. So Levi, it's all yours.
Thanks, Nate. I'm really glad to get to be here tonight to talk about what I feel is really important programming for our students. As Nate said, I'm the co-op and work-based learning coordinator. And the joy for me in this position is that I'm taking a really well-established position and adding something new to it. Sarah Dowd worked on this for a really long time, and it's very evident in her community connections that she has. People are willing to connect with me, they're willing to explain all the processes from their perspective, and the staff at Cold Hollow Career Center has such a strong understanding of the programming, and they're just such willing leaders for me, so that's been wonderful. So the newness of this position allows growth and initiative that we haven't been able to see in this role prior to now. It allows a close connection with both our high schools and a deeper dive into our communities. I have the unique opportunity to take the knowledge that I have of the community and the relationships that are being built through my part-time job with the town of Richford and apply it to meeting individual student needs through the role that I have at Cold Hollow. And my background with the SU and special education affords me a gift that I don't think many teachers get to have. I get to watch students go through their entire educational career. So my first year at Berkshire 8th graders are now the seniors that I get to work with. My Richford students that I work with were in 3rd grade when I first started working with them. So what a great gift that is to me. It allows me to have a connection with a lot of families already, and allows for a transition that's probably a lot easier than it would have been since I'm learning a whole new role. So my home base is Cold Hollow Career Center, but I've been able to spend time in both high schools already, meeting with students, meeting with some teachers, and beginning programming. In Enosburg, I'm really impressed with the opportunities that Flexible Pathways offers, the organization that Maggie uses to oversee it. She's such a willing teacher, and we're working to digitalize forms together that haven't been digitalized yet to meet the needs of a number of different students. Working in Richford, we're at a very different point, beginning the process in a very different way. Allison and Jane Revere have been working closely with me to meet with students, to develop programming. Some current goals that I have and that we've developed, Nate and I have worked closely to develop, are increasing the presence in both high schools and working closely with teachers to provide credit through work-based learning opportunities. I think an example that we're currently seeing success in this is that a lot of kids are signing themselves out of school at 18 during the day, and then I've been calling them and they've been showing willingness and excitement to come back in and meet because of work-based learning. So it's our hope to offer more local business tours as well, and have an increase in job shadowing so that students are exposed to professions earlier on. Beth had a great idea this summer of creating an opportunity access point for teachers when they're interested in doing project-based learning. So we were able to take this one step further and create this SU-wide offering for both high schools as an access point for finding community service and project-based learning opportunities that actually match student interests. I feel like this is really important Because right now, when I talk to kids, they're just completing their community service. A lot of the students that I talk to are not engaged. It's something that they just like check off a list. So the authenticity of learning, the purpose and the engagement they're just kind of jaded right now. So what this means is that students aren't actually getting what we want them to out of this experience. They're not getting what they need, and the communities aren't getting the next volunteers and the next community leaders funneled through naturally. We want to put our students in a position in which they feel passionate about the community work that they're doing, and the community wants to celebrate the kids for doing that. So in this role, we have the opportunity to teach all of the students that we have the joy of giving through work they're passionate about and give them a sense of success. We can also offer teachers this clearinghouse and a group of opportunities in order to allow a gradual release of responsibilities so that students can be more independent with project-based learning or community service. And during that time, they can be giving back to their community and increasing their ownership over it. It also gives businesses and community members a chance to see our youth in action, and then it leads them to a place of seeing youth as potential employees in the future. And theoretically, this is going to allow for a more direct pipeline to local employment, both through this programming, but also for their future careers in this area. And in some occasions already, youth have been able to work directly with local business owners, which is a really neat thing, because you have business owners saying things like, okay, when I need somebody during sugaring, I'm going to ask this kid to come help me. This is great. So last night I got the opportunity to meet with Heather Moore, and through that, another organic opportunity that's presenting itself is that I'll be working with LEADs for a couple hours a week, mentoring and teaching student employees so that we can have better learning and better employment outcomes. So looking a little further out, I think that one of our major hopes is that we will have the ability to streamline the referral process for work-based learning, since it's a new program, through either an application or, in the case of students who we have that are at risk, maybe a SST process so that they're on our radar early and we can proactively place them in the appropriate experiences.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Levi or I on our co-op or work-based learning program?
I don't think I have any questions, do you? Anybody? No? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Levi.
Bye-bye. So next on the agenda is Morgan.
Thank you. I still owe you an August monthly financial report. We are working through some technical glitches with the new software that we were put on July 1st. And that's largely around the reporting side of it. So I will push that out to you as soon as I can. We've had some success recently, but not enough to get something in your hands for this meeting. I also put on your agenda just a heads up around the SRO contract. You were in your last of 3 years with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office for SROs at both Richford and Enosburg high schools. I did send a proposal to you by email that came from the sheriff. We don't need to take action on that now, but I will want to know in 2 months when we start getting into the thick of budgeting, if that's the direction that you want to go.
Okay.
Just so we have enough money for that.
Okay.
I do have one action item which we can do tonight, or we do have enough time so that you could punt it to your next meeting. On November 5th, both VSBIT and VHI have their annual meetings at Lake Maury in conjunction with the School Board Association Conference and the Superintendent's Association Conference. Some of you may have been to the School Board Association Conference in the past. As members of both VSBIT and VHI, you get to vote at their annual meeting. There's not a lot on the agenda of each this year, as in past years, but in order to do that, we either need to have you identify a board member or an employee or someone else who is going to go be at that meeting in person and cast your ballot. Or you can give the VISBIT and the VHI board the authority to vote for you. We do this motion every year. I think in the past you've often given it to a board member if the board member was planning on being there. If not, your superintendent or principals are often there. We do not have the proxy yet for VHI. They were not ready for your meeting time tonight, so we could wait and do both of them next month. We could decide on the VISBIT meeting tonight and do VHI next month, whatever your pleasure is.
So does anybody at this table plan on going to that meeting? And I can't speak for Kevin, because Kevin's the chair and that's typically the voters. But, so,
You want to put it off for next meeting, that way Kevin's
so
here?
maybe Kevin can chime in, but,
What's the date of the meeting, Mark?
The date is November 5th.
I think last year we gave you authority for that.
It might have been Mary Niles.
Oh,
It was Mary Niles.
I think there's a strong possibility that those could be virtual meetings
Oh,
this year. I think right now they're planning on in person, but
okay.
I would be a little surprised.
Okay, so I guess maybe tomorrow at the SU meeting, you can ask to see if anybody's planning on attending that meeting. So yeah, let's pick it to next
Yep.
month. Okay.
So unless you have any questions, that's all I have this month.
What was that? I have, I was gonna say I have this little suggestion, but it might be nitpicky, and maybe I'll keep it for other, but it has to do with like the financial reports, like the warrants. So maybe I should wait.
It's up to you.
It's nitpicky, you know, when we get the warrants, they all have the same scan number because it comes from the copier. I wonder if I could request that they actually have like a title, like a date or something, because they keep coming back into your email as people are approving them, and I can't tell if it's a new warrant or not.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying? So it gets super confusing of whether I've already approved it or not.
I don't know the answer to that, but I'll look into it.
Okay. I think you just rename it.
I think you send it to yourself and then name it and then forward it to others.
Yeah. Because it's just, yeah, yes. Just for efficiency's sake. Okay, so if that's it, Morgan, then we'll move on to Lynn.
Okay. Am I using the mic?
So I'll start with personnel. So I have some, I'm going to give you all of the personnel under hiring and resignations. We have just a couple that will require action. So you, at Enosburg Middle School, we've hired Chantel Perchibes as a paraeducator, Ann Hall as a PE teacher for the remainder of the year, Tyann Dixon as a paraeducator at the high school, and Kira Weatherwax as well. At Richford Junior Senior High School and Richford Elementary School, we have hired Melanie Gross as our family engagement coordinator. So that will be a shared position, and I'm hopeful that we're very close to having someone in the NMV slot, so we'll be fully staffed in terms of the family engagement coordinators. So I wonder if the board would do a motion to hire Ann Hull as the PE teacher for the remainder of the year.
For the motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right, Rick made the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
And then this is informational under resignations. Donnie Longley, paraeducator at Richford Elementary, Lauren Zini and Brianna Marshall have resigned as paraeducators, and Eric McGraw, who was our tech coordinator for Richford, both of the Richford schools, has also resigned. We have no retirements in this past month. We still have some open positions. So in Enosburg Elementary, we have a paraeducator position. At Enosburg High School, we're looking for a paraeducator. We're still looking for a long-term science substitute teacher to fill an FMLA leave. We're looking for an athletic trainer, a girls volleyball coach. At Richford Elementary, we're looking for a paraeducator, a certified tutor, and a long-term elementary sub. At Richford Senior High School, we're looking for a custodian, a paraeducator, and a technology coordinator for both schools. So those are our openings. So we have already done the student portion of my report. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about school reopening. So I just talked personally for a moment. In the last about a week, I have been able to spend some time in 2 of our schools, which has helped to fill my heart a little to be able to see students and, happy students engaging and learning. And I've been very impressed with just the process and the procedures that are so well established in the classrooms that I was in already at this point in the year. I think that, we're experiencing that beginning of the year, making sure that everybody understands what the expectations are. I think that's pretty normal for this point in the year. I think that we have seen some added challenges, some behavioral challenges that we've been about 1.5 years since we've had everybody in all of the buildings. So we've got a little bit of that we're contending with, but for the most part, I think we're off to a really, really positive start. In terms of the pandemic, it is felt at the start of this year different than last year. Last year we had a lot of guidance leading up to the start of school, and we have less of that this year, and we were not expecting to be where we are right now with the pandemic. So we had, at this point, we had established all of our health and safety measures. It is strange to be in a straight line.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to speak, so I apologize, I don't quite know who to look at. So the health and safety measures are pretty solidly in place. We're learning more about, things like music, and we have recently put in some measures in our music classes as well. So we are keeping our eye on the recommendations that are coming from the experts, and we're making sure that we're attending to those. In terms of the virus, we have at this point had, I believe we're at 28 cases so far. Not all of those were at school while infectious, but I think we're somewhere around 20 at school while infectious. That might not be exactly right, but it's close. So our experiences to date have been that our nurses and our principals in those schools where they're having multiple cases have been very, very busy. The contact tracing support that was in place last year through the Department of Health, they don't have the capacity that they had last year. So we're seeing a lot more of that fall onto our schools. So it's made it a little hard to kind of lift and leverage on some other things we were hoping to get off the ground. So the other piece that we're working through is gearing up to be able to do the surveillance testing for staff and students that the state is offering. So we're trying to get ourselves in a place where we're going to be ready to go with that. There's some training that we have to do to prepare for that. So we've shifted some responsibilities around, and we think we're ready to move forward. So hopefully by the time we come back next month, that'll be solidly in place.
So is the plan to start that at the end of this month or October 10th? Or have we not?
For surveillance?
Yeah.
We've signed up. I'm not certain which date because we still have to go through the training first. So once we finish the training requirements, we'll get what the date is going to be.
Is there any discussion about potential having any local opportunity for kids or staff to be tested when they're concerned that there has been an exposure? So not just the surveillance, but I've just been thinking about the equity of access, and we're talking about the kids that come from pretty different places and needing to get transportation. If you don't have a doctor in Enosburg, then my understanding is St. Albans is the closest. Correct. Is there any discussion? I've reached out to some local reps who haven't gotten back to me, but I just wasn't sure if that was anything on the horizon.
It's something I can certainly bring up in our weekly Secretary French meeting. I can ask.
I think that's.
Yeah. I do think that what we're seeing right now is because of the increased cases, in schools and the number of students who have had to quarantine.
Yep.
I think it's putting pressure on the testing capacity at the state level. So we're seeing longer waits
Yep.
for people to be tested, and like you said, the access isn't what it was
Right.
as we were ending last school year. So I think this is another symptom of no one was expecting to be
Sure.
here in this moment. So I think they're trying to ramp up that support, and I know that they've contracted, is what I had heard last week, and they're trying to increase their staffing capacity for that testing. So I will ask. I think that's a really good point, just about the regional piece.
Yeah,
Because who's going to go to St. Albans to get tested?
The other thing, I think that until we get better contact tracing, I would discourage you from doing surveillance testing, because it's going to add more stress to an already stressed system, I think. And also until state supplies or we come up with a way to do that contact tracing. I'm a little nervous about increasing.
I mean, the theory behind that, though, is that if we don't catch them, we're going to end up with more positives, which will put additional burdens on our contact tracers in our schools. So the hope is that you catch them before they spread it to anyone else. I understand completely what you're saying.
Correct, but how many cases do we have of in-school transmission now?
I think that they have not confirmed for us. I believe we've had a couple.
Okay.
Not a lot. A lot of what we're seeing is transmission within families.
Right.
And within the community, there are some that have been unknown transmissions.
Okay.
So I think by the time we get there, Rick, because we're not ready to flip the switch on surveillance testing like next week. We've
Okay.
got some time ahead of us before we get there.
And then, can you walk me through what the policy is as far as when classes are being sent home, when, like, the whole process that happens?
So we try not to send the whole class home unless they are all close contacts.
Okay.
So they, at today's press conference, announced that they're going to be releasing some changes to how we determine those close contacts.
Okay.
That are different than
What they have.
what we had. So
Okay.
we had some competing recommendations around close contacts. So I can't really speak to what the changes will be because I have not seen it in my inbox yet since the press conference today. Can you?
Okay. I was going to say, I have an extra one here.
So there's a lot. So to be able to determine what, if it's a whole class, it has to do with the number of hours that they've been all together in the space consecutively.
Okay.
It also has to do with the number of minutes they've been within 6 feet of a COVID positive person.
Okay.
It also has to do with the type of activity that they've been doing. So if they've been doing a higher risk activity like competing in a basketball game, even if they were masked, if they were up close and competing and serving,
Okay.
if they were singing closer to each other. So those are all
Factors.
that weigh in. So we have thankfully not had to quarantine a lot of classrooms at this point. It's usually a small group of students, but we have definitely had to quarantine some classrooms.
Okay. And then how, have we determined anything about vaccination levels? They haven't told us how to do that yet, right?
They have. So we have sent out attestation forms to all families in FNESU. And what families need to do is fill out the attestation form and submit a copy of either their immunization record or their COVID vaccination card. And then that's how we will get the number of students that are vaccinated to be able to calculate what our percentage is.
Okay. And
So
then,
we're in the game of waiting.
are we using any of that data as far as the close contact, not close contact yet?
So if you're a high school student and the nurse has to call your parent to
Yep.
say your child is a close contact, and the nurse doesn't already have documentation that you are vaccinated, they would be saying, as a close contact, you're going to need to go home and quarantine unless they have been vaccinated. So if you bring us the attestation form and a copy of the vaccination card, they do not have to quarantine
Okay.
If they don't have symptoms.
if they don't have symptoms.
And so I would like to give a huge shout out to the nurses, because I know that they're calling families at 8:30 at night from school. They've called on Labor Day. Like, they are putting in some serious hours on this, and so I would like to publicly thank them for sure.
I just want to add in principals, because
And
the
principals,
principals
yeah.
are right beside them.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Sorry. Yes. They needed their moment in the sun.
So I think, you know, in terms of where we're heading from here, last week, President Biden announced that they were going to be working on making a mandate for employers with greater than 100 employees to vaccinate, to make vaccination requirements. It appears that there's a or in that it's a requirement, or they submit to weekly testing. So we're still in a little bit of a waiting game to determine if that federal mandate, which will come out of OSHA, will that fall onto schools as a mandate? So there's some question about whether it will or not. At today's press conference, the governor did say that he mandated vaccination for all state employees, and he would like to encourage school boards to do the same. And he also brought up he's not sure if the federal requirement will apply to schools or not, but it is encouraging boards to consider that. So
There are some other schools that have already done it.
yes, so in the region there are definitely other schools that have done it. So that's on the radar. Ready to move on a decision on that, but it's definitely something that I've been thinking about and working on with colleagues. So are there any other questions just about reopening or where we are with COVID?
Nope.
Okay. And I have nothing under other, so I'm sure then.
Okay, principal's report. Kelly is not with us, but you have the board report. Beth, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. Jennifer, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. Rachel?
Just that we are doing a new style of open house this year. We're going to do a ice cream social outdoors. More of a meet and greet this year. And that'll be next week. And we got a donation from Ben and Jerry's, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Nice. Joseph, do you have anything to add?
Yes, just two informational items. One is, since I submitted my report, Nathaniel Robtoy, our senior, has been the recipient of the UVM Green and Gold Award. So that's a nice student celebration. And then, just on the heels of what Lynn reported around coverage for our Earth Science class, the three science teachers stepped up to the plate and decided each one would break up that capacity. And so we now have 3 licensed teachers covering the capacity left by the person who's out on maternity leave. And that will stop when she gets back second semester. So that's an update, a recent update.
I feel like is the theme of the year is people stepping up to fill holes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Nate, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just have an action item, need approval and a signature from Lynn of our Perkins federal fund agreement. We submit a small portion of that to a consortium statewide, and we need to agree to pay that. And so I just need a motion from the board to agree to approve our consortium agreement.
Do I have a motion?
I can make that motion.
Amy made the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay.
What is the agreement? I didn't hear it.
It is the VACTED, V-A-C-T-E-D,
V-A-C-A-T-E-D?
V-A-C-T-E-D.
Yep. Okay.
It's the director's agreement, and that is for Perkins federal funds to be pooled statewide in a consortium. Not exactly what your motion was, but
Yeah,
as long as I have approval, let you,
exactly.
I'm good.
Is it pulled every year, or is that?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
This is the first time it's needed board approval. It
Oh.
usually just needs superintendent's signature.
Gotcha.
So another federal.
Yeah, exactly.
Nate, can I just ask, I'm just curious, it says that you're serving 140 kids with a bunch of exclamation points. I'm curious if that's just because you're excited that they're back, or is that a much bigger number in comparison?
That is, it's a both, but
Fair.
it's a much bigger number. I think we're about 40 kids more than we were last year.
Wow, great.
Wow.
That's great. Glad to hear that.
Okay, and that brings us to board business. So next regular scheduled meeting is October 12th, and that'll be held at Richford. Stormwater permit, so I can give you the update on that. So I attended the training, and so so basically there's a grant that, how do I say this? Okay, so there's a grant that pays for all of the kind of consulting and engineering. They manage all of that. The only thing that we would have to pay for is the actual permitting itself for the stormwater, but it is a zero match, so it's 100% funded. And it's kind of, I asked some questions, it kind of sounds like a no-brainer that it's money that's going to pay for the management and design of our stormwater permits. Yeah. And then after that, after the grant pays for the initial phasing of the design and engineering and consulting. And then after that, there's money through the Department of Environment, Vermont Department of Environment Conservation to pay for the implementation of the project. So that's also huge, right? But there's state money that if we have to do some pretty significant construction, that they would pay for that. That I'm not sure if there's a match or not, but the grant that I'm speaking of, which actually the deadline is by the end of the month, whether we want to participate or not, there is zero match on that, so there's no money out of our pockets. So I basically needed to figure out if A, you have any questions, and B, if there would be a motion to apply for that grant or not.
My only question is, did you ever ask what structures this actually applies to?
So they're saying it's the elementary school.
So just the elementary school?
That's what they're saying.
Do we have stormwater permits for?
For here, that's what I can't figure out.
Okay.
Is if I can't find a stormwater permit for the high school.
Okay.
But the state is saying that we just need this permit for the elementary school, which I can't figure out, but that's what they're saying.
Well, hey, I'll make the motion to go ahead.
Okay. So, if there's no more discussion, Rick makes the motion to apply for the grant. And would you give me the authority to go ahead and complete that, or do you want Morgan or somebody to complete that?
I will give you the authority to complete that.
Okay. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So I will take care of that tomorrow, and I'll send, Morgan, I'll send you all that info. Do you have any questions, Morgan?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, I should say, apparently, there's money, so people get fined money if you do not comply, right? But the fines are taken and given to people who over-comply.
Oh, look at that.
So if you're gonna say, like, we're gonna go above and beyond and make this, completely environmentally friendly, and we're gonna take it to the next level, they'll actually give you the fine money to those schools. Just a thought.
Around the school.
And there's no chance that like after this
How
grant
much
money
is
goes
it,
away
like
that they come back and say, oh, actually the high school does need to go through this process?
Well, so that's, hopefully in this process, we actually nail down with the engineers will be showing up
Okay.
on premises. And so I feel like that needs to be one of the questions to the engineer. So what you're telling us is it's just this campus
Right.
and not. So I don't know if there was a stormwater permit during construction when this was built.
That's what I'm wondering.
That's what I thought. But again, when you look at the map, there's no pin in the map that this has been. So that's where the confusion is. But they're saying, like, nope, it's the letter and the permit that we're referencing is just the elementary school. SU board representative report. You could watch it on Northwest Access. So,
Or Vermont Digger.
or exactly. So the SU board, I think what actually we took action on was portrait of a graduate work. And they brought forth of all of the work that has been completed to this point and wanted support and blessing to continue with the work, and the board gave that. I can't think of anything else then.
Facilities director.
Oh, and there is a position for facilities director at the SU level, which I have seen posted. So it is on School Spring, if anybody out there wants to apply. And then, what else? I think that was it. Can you remember, Rick? Okay. So set future agenda items. I thought, when are we talking about Cold Hollow? I thought we were.
So I think three things. Cold Hollow construction
Yep.
project update and new program. Are we gonna talk a little about that maybe next time, maybe?
Yep,
Okay.
great.
And then we had said we would bring back the scholarship fund update at today's meeting, but since Kevin's not here and he's been a big part of that, Morgan and I talked today and said we would wait. Is he on there? We wait until October, so we'll bring that in October.
Okay, so we have Cold Hollow construction, programming, Cold Hollow programming, and the scholarship fund. Anything else that anybody wants to add?
Can I ask one just general question? I can ask it tomorrow too, but, and maybe more. I was just wondering how the online school.
Oh, that's not added to our.
So she won't be on this
SU.
one because she falls under FNESU.
Oh, yeah, SU,
She
right.
visits to the local.
I'm getting
ones.
my meetings mixed up. Okay.
Gab, do you want to give us an update?
I don't really have anything new. We're at 25 students with K-5, K-6, 2 7th graders and 10 high school students. Everything's going pretty smoothly.
Perfect.
So the high school students, they go through the VLTC, correct?
No, they're using the Flexible Pathways Academy program that we've been doing at the high school in Enosburg for several years.
Okay.
So they're using the mastery transcript.
Okay. And they're primarily using the Flexible Pathways Academy, or are they accessing the school as well?
They're doing both. We have kids in FPA who are full-time in-person students. We have students who are doing FPA that are taking, most of the kids that I'm working with are taking a couple classes through BTBLC and then doing projects to meet their other proficiencies.
Okay. Okay.
Maggie's got a set of students and I have a set of students.
So one thing that is new, Gab, is that when we were trying to staff up the Flexible Pathways Academy, we didn't have enough interest or the ability to staff that middle school option, so the 7 and 8, because there are significant licensing requirements for middle school teachers. So do you want to talk a little bit about how we accomplish the 7th and 8th grade offerings?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Sometimes I forget which board like whole things to already. So we have 2 7th graders taking advantage of this option. We're using something called Ed Options, and it's through Edmentum. Rutland's also using Ed Options. It's similar to VTVLC, but the platform's a little bit different. The course options are similar, and students seem to be doing okay with it. So there's teachers that they can access and live meetings that they can access at various times synchronously, and then they can also access recordings to all their lessons if they need it.
Neat.
And VTVLC is still in play in our schools. It's not part of Gav's Academy, but students at both high schools can access individual classes. And then you have a handful of tuition students who are overseen right now by Allison Witherspoon at Richford High School, who actually will enroll at Richford High School, take all their classes through VTVLC, so they may be in a tuition town from the southern part of the state. And we don't see them,
I
but
remember talking about that. So basically, those students though are not in Gab's count, correct? Okay.
They are not using the mastery transcript. I think that's the biggest difference.
Okay.
So that's a shift that we made this year. So we shifted that from having it connected to Enosburg High School to being connected to Richford High School.
Gotcha.
So we've had that in place, but for the first time this year, Richford's taking the lead on that. So those students will show up in Richford's enrollment from here
Okay.
forward.
Okay. Okay. Any other?
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sure.
Homeschool, how many kids?
We don't know that yet.
Okay.
Okay.
I have some numbers on homeschool. Did I hear the question right?
Yeah, how many students are homeschooling, do you know?
Oh, our home, well, I don't know how many are.
We
I
don't
know how
have
many
that
homeschool kids we got back. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. I know how many homeschool students we have in our program that were homeschooling last year or would have homeschooled this year.
Can you tell us that number, Gab?
I can, yeah. I think it's 6.
Okay.
And then we got 2 more, so I think we might be at 8 for homeschool. 2, 3, 4.
So homeschool students that entered your program? Yeah. Okay.
Correct. It's students that were either homeschooling last year or have always homeschooled and are currently in our program instead of homeschooling. We have 4 of those. Then we have 1 student who would have homeschooled this year had we not offered something, and we got 2 more that would have homeschooled if we hadn't offered something recently. New people who moved into Berkshire new.
Gotcha. Okay, any other questions? Questions? Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Thank you. Rick made the motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Good night, everyone.